everyone, and welcome to a basic tutorial on how to create a crate in 3D Studio Max. So let's get started. First we'll create a box, and we're going to assign it a measurement. So right now, if you're done creating your box and you right clicked by accident, don't worry. What we need to do is change the parameters of that box. We're going to go to our modify menu, and we're going to change it to 150 by 150 by 150 so that we have a perfectly square box. If you push Z while the box is selected, it will zoom in on it, and you can use the middle mouse button keys to rotate around it to make sure that that box is indeed square. What we're going to do next is we're going to take a look at our reference image, and maybe we should import it into 3D Studio Max to make things a little bit easier for ourselves to see what type of box we'll be making. I will make a plane that's going to be perfectly square, so let's change the parameters of that to 150 by 150 as well. And I'm going to go to my material editor, which will open up momentarily, and I will create a standard material. I will double click on the standard material title, which will open up its parameters. And AVG wants an update. Fantastic. Let's close that. We'll go to the diffuse color. Beside that, we can now load our texture in. Be sure to take this time, just take the next second, pause the video, find a texture online of a crate side, just one single side of it, that's perfectly square, save it to your desktop or save it to whatever location you want, and then come back to the video right now and find your crate, the crate texture you saved, and double click on that, and it will bring in the crate texture here. If you double click on the little image, you'll notice that that's the crate texture. You can also double click on the sphere on the material editor, and you'll see the crate texture. Now let's apply it to this front flat plane that we created. So we'll right click on the material, say show shaded material in viewport, and we'll click assign material to selection, and you have a nice crate side right there. Now what we want to do is modify our box to not just simply be like flat sides. I mean, right now if we actually applied our texture to this box, we would get a good looking crate automatically. 3D Studio Max will automatically unwrap a box to be one flat side multiplied over all 6 sides. So that's an easy way to create a box. But for now, we're actually going to go into a little bit more detail than that. I'm going to undo that because I want to actually get the detail to match. Oops, I need to turn off the grid here. I want the detail to match this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the parameters of my box and give myself a little bit more polys to work with here, and I'm going to imitate the texture I'm seeing on the other side. So I'm actually going to just make sure they look identical like that, and I'm going to convert this to a mesh. You can either do it here or go to your modifier list and go edit mesh, and I'm going to adjust the vertexes to the way I want so it kind of matches the outline, the inset of this box here. So something like that. Now that I have that, and I'll just go to my other view right now, I can grab the polygons in the middle and I can extrude them inwards slightly. That's going to give my box some depth, which is fantastic. Now you can go into a little bit more detail and actually make the planks of wood behind the box as well. If you see where I highlighted these polygons here in our reference image, there's actually several different planks of wood. And you know what? Just to show you guys, I'm going to do that right now. So I'm going to delete those polygons that I actually had selected, and I'm going to create new planes. Actually, to give it a little bit more depth, I'm going to create different boxes. So I'm going to create some boxes inside this crate. I'm going to create a box. I'm going to place it inside my crate, as accurately as possible. I could take away most of these parameters, most of these segments, because they're not needed. And I'll try and accurately measure up to what I'm seeing on the other side. So I'm seeing that. I'm seeing this. Doesn't have to be 100% perfect. Putting these planks in is just going to give you that little extra depth to your crate that's actually going to, make it a little bit more realistic. Especially since we're working from a texture just pulled off the internet. Any little details you can add from the 3D model will definitely be handy. And of course, the last detail we need to add is there's a bar crossing the entire 3D model. So let's make one final box. We're going to add one segment going up and down the box like this. I'm going to turn it into an edit mesh, or you can turn it into an edit poly, whichever you prefer. I'm going to scale these vertices slightly. I'm going to move it to the middle of this crate, and I'm going to rotate it. Now you'll notice that the rotation leaves a little bit of space. That's fine. There is a tool that you can look up. If you look at the hotbar all the way up here, we have our move, rotate, and scale tools. Now instead of scaling from the view right here, which we can see here, this is called the reference coordinate system, and you can actually change this from view, screen, world, parent, local. This just changes how the gizmo is coordinating with your model that you're playing with. If I go to local, you'll notice the gizmo is actually following the object that I have selected, and now I can scale accordingly this way. And then I'll just change that back to view just for next time, so I don't play around and forget what I've done. And so now that that plank is adjusted and all the other planks are in place, I'm just going to move it. And now I think I have a really good front facing of that box. So if I assign a texture now, it'll all be messed up. There's no UV map properly on all these objects. What I'm going to do with my simple box that we created at the start of this tutorial is I'm going to delete every polygon that's not on the front of the box itself. So all I'm left with is one side of that crate. You can go into further detail and delete more polygons. What we're going to do is we're going to attach all these objects together. I'm going to click attach, 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 until they're all one solid object. Go behind, and you can delete any polygon that's not going to be visible to the users that will see this crate. Now you'll be saving some extra polygons that are not visible to anybody else. So now that we have the one side of our crate completed, at least model wise, we need to unwrap it. Simply put, unwrapping a model just from one-sided view, you can just go into the unwrap UVW from your modifier list, go into polygon mode or edge or vertice, but just open up the UV editor like I just did here. Grab all the polygons by left clicking and dragging, like so. Scroll down the modifier parameter list until you see projection. Now projection is just telling 3D Studio Max how to look at a 3D model to flatten it out into a 2D image. We're going to tell it to look flat on at this side of our 3D model. If I click on planar map, you'll notice the view might not be right. This yellow box that just appeared in 3D Studio Max is not the right way. That's why there's different alignment options. You can choose X, Y, and Z. You'll notice that Y created a yellow box that's facing the exact way we want to, and in our texture map you can see it resembles what our crate looks like from one viewport, which is fantastic. Turn off planar map by left clicking on it one more time, and let's go to our edit UVW menu. And now if you want to see it without the checkerboard pattern in the background, just click on this little checkerboard cube right here, and you can actually see the map itself, all the edges. We know that this is looking a lot better already than, well, obviously what it was before. So I'm content with this. I'm happy. I can get out of my unwrap UVW menu, and I can go back to the create basic crate menu and left click in the scene to deselect it. I'm going to go to my material editor. I'm going to click on my front panel here. I'm going to go to my standard material, make sure that's selected. You'll see the tick boxes around that material, and I'm going to click assign material to selection. Now we have a box front that has a lot of detail. It has some depth to it. You can see through the holes there, and you can still adjust your model slightly. Don't delete polygons. Don't go too crazy. The first thing you want to do is right click on Unwrap UVW and push Collapse All. This saves all the features that your model currently has. So if you do a little bit of editing, like I'm going to grab an element, I'm going to grab this plank of wood we made, I'm going to pull it forward slightly. You'll notice that the unwrap didn't change at all, and that we can still adjust our model. You can even adjust the vertexes, you know, make it look as nice as possible. Our texture wasn't exactly perfect, but this is how we can manage to make it a little bit better. See, that's already looking a lot better there. So once we have one side of our model done, and we're fairly happy with how it turned out, we have a flat face to work with here, the original box face that we had. All we need to do now is grab this face and duplicate it. You can use the Tools Mirror option and mirror a reference on the X, Y, or Z platform by clicking these and making sure you click reference here. So Y was the opposite side, so let's click on Y. Perfect, like that. Now, next step is to hold the Shift key while on the Rotate tool, which is E. Hold the Shift key and rotate the object 90 degrees. Now, sometimes you'll notice that you can't get a perfect 90-degree angle. You're like frustrated in trying. Cancel out of this, and you'll notice that if you go to the top bar in 3D Studio Max, there is a Angle Snap tool. This will help you during rotation to snap to 5 degrees every time you move the mouse. Hold the Shift key, left click on the rotate, and you'll notice now it's going a perfect 5-degree angles, and now I have my perfect 90 degrees. It's going to ask you what type of object you want to save it as. Just save it as a reference for now and push OK. Now we're going to mirror this object as well, so I'm going to hit Tools, Mirror, and this time I'm going to go on the X-axis. And now I have all 4 sides of my box with depth and detail. You can see through it a little bit, which gives it that extra little oomph. And now we just need to create the top and bottom. Simply grab one of the sides, hold the Shift key, and rotate it 90 degrees as a reference as well, and just move it in the viewports until it matches everything else, like so. And lift it up, and we'll make sure all the edges match up here. Perfect. Look at that. Great. I can delete my reference now that we're pretty happy with how this box is turning out, and I'm just going to mirror the top one on the Z axis, and it will create the bottom. I'm going to push G to get rid of my grid. All my sides are looking great. I can see a little bit on the inside of the crate, which gives it that depth I like. The texture looks pretty good. And I think in Unity this is actually going to look pretty good. So now that we're done our crate and it adds that depth we like, the shadows even look good on it inside the default max shadows, I want you to highlight the entire crate, and we're going to turn it off from the references. We don't want the reference to be in there anymore because Unity won't recognize that, and other programs won't either. Highlight all the objects in your scene and right click and push Convert to Editable Mesh or Editable Poly. What this will do is collapse those models automatically for you into an Edit Mesh or an Edit Poly. Now that they're all Edit Mesh, if you click on each one, you can see they're all Edit Mesh. You can attach them all into one final object. Let's do that. All you have to do is left click on one of the objects, look at the drop down, and you'll see the Attach option. Left click on the other objects in the scene. When you'll notice you'll be able to click on those objects because your arrow will turn into a crosshair, and start clicking on them. Like so. Until your crosshair disappears. I'm moving around the entire object so I know that it's one solid cube. Perfect. You can now begin by welding the vertices that are matching up really close. A little trick that I like to do that's, you know, pretty good, I like it at least, is I know that the closest vertices are going to be really, really close to each other because I move the objects to be really close. I see that the weld here is at 0.1 in Edit Mesh. If you're in Edit Poly mode, you'll actually have a pop-up when you click the weld options, and you can adjust it manually yourself. And if I click 0.1, you'll notice that there's a vertex count up here. Right now it says I have 504 vertexes selected. I know that at least, let's count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, around 14 vertexes need to weld. So if I click selected, right now it goes from 504 to 484, and you'll notice that some of the edges start softening up. That means those edges are actually being welded to each other. Let's try and increase that number a bit. There you go. All those edges are softening up with each other, which means that all those edges are being welded together. And we went from a vertex count of 504 to 459, which tells me, yeah, I think most of those edges that were really close enough welded together, and there shouldn't be any seam lines visible. I'm then going to go to polygon mode, grab my entire crate, and because there's a lot of hard edges, I'm going to turn off all the smoothing groups by scrolling down the modifier menu to where it says smoothing groups. I see that a lot of numbers aren't showing up here in gray, which means that a lot of the object is actually a whole bunch of different smoothing groups. If I click select by smoothing group, you'll notice 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those smoothing groups are actually active on this model. I'm going to clear all the smoothing groups off this model to make sure it's a really sharp object. You'll notice that even while it's highlighted in red, everything turned a lot sharper, and if I go back to it, everything is nice, sharp, crisp, welded, and ready for export. To finally export our model into Unity, we want to export it as an FBX file. Simply go up to the top left max icon, click on that, click on export, and automatically it should go to FBX file format first. Type in the name that you want to save it as, save, excuse me, crate, I'll save it as crate 2, save, and you'll notice a whole bunch of different options start popping up. Don't worry too much about these right now. Normally the FBX file format will default to the best format possible, but just make sure that if you have no animations or animations, make sure to click animation on if you have animations. If you don't worry, you can keep it clicked off and just push OK, and it exported just fine, and you're ready to drag that file to Unity, and you have your very first crate to test out in Unity. I hope this has been pretty helpful. If you guys have any questions and stuff like that, be sure to leave a comment or just send me a message. Thank you very much, and good luck.